Well, November 1st marks the road to Hutch, and I am so excited to be covering the Central District once again, this year being my second full season of covering it. And I cannot wait to jump into all 9 teams as we get ready to deep dive into their preseason and what they were able to do and what players they lost coming into their November 1st games. It's going to be a very fun season. I have coaches interviews ready to go. I have a new co-host that will be joining me shortly. It's all going to be a whole lot more fun. Plus, we have a name. I know last year I just said the 2023 Central District Report or whatever it was. Now we have an actual name for this podcast. It is the NJCAA Central District Hoops Report. I'm Justin Griffiths. I'm going to be your host all season long. So let's go ahead and jump into the Vincennes Jamboree that was hosted on October 13th. And yes, I did make the trek down to Vincennes on October 13th to watch the Jamboree. 8 of the 9 district teams were participating in it, and it was a great time once again to head down to Vincennes. They put on a fantastic event. You had games in the main gym, you had games in the Student Rec Center, and you had games up top in the West Gym, and you even had to go over to Belis Gym, historic Belis Gym, home of the 1972 team, and play there. So it was a great event all around. Big props to Coach Davis for putting that together as he does every single season. And what myself and my co-host really got into was there was a team to us that stood out above the rest in this district that looked more put together, and that was the John A. Logan Volunteers. Last year they finished 15-16 with an 8-8 record in the district, coming off of a national championship the year before. So the championship hangover was indeed real for Logan. They returned Julian Norris, who's averaging 15 points per game with 2.8 rebounds. And he's shooting an amazing clip of 46.4 from the field. Also coming back is Cameron Boone, and he's averaging 4 points off the bench for him, and he's shooting 55.6. Caden Hawkins is another big wing for Coach Smith Peters. He averaged 7.9 points per game and was 42% from behind the arc. Those 3 on top of Evan Noel, who averaged 1.2 points per game, is going to be part of the success factor for Coach Smith Peters. On top of their top transfers coming into Logan, Nadeko Rucker from Colby Community College, he averaged 13.2 points and 4.3 rebounds last year, and Xavier Zubrick from Navarro, who had 6.6 points per game and 3.8 rebounds. The key losses for them are obviously Alfred Worrell, RJ Walker, Elliot Londas, Jordan Logan, big time contributors to not only to last year but to the national championship team run as well. You have a good mixture of old guys and new guys. They looked really sharp as you can be, going up against live competition for the first time on October 13th. They also did relatively well in the Midwest Jamboree on the 20th. But really looking out, and my big takeaway from the day was that Logan is back and they are hungry to be one of the top contenders in the district this year. And that says a lot for Coach Smith Peters, kind of picking himself off the mat after, first year winning a national championship, the next year being a 500 ball club. Really took a deep dive, but now he's getting himself back up. His team looks really good, and it is going to be great for the league for Logan to be good. They are ranked number 19 in JUCO Advocates polling. They are not ranked in the NJCAA polling that came out this Monday, but I see that changing very soon as we get into the teams that Logan has to play this year. It is evident that Coach Smith-Peters once again loaded up his non-district schedule, and it's going to be very interesting to see what he and what Logan can do heading into this season. The next team I want to focus on is the Kaskaskia Blue Devils, led by Coach Brian Hancock in his 17th year, looking to get win number 300 this year. He's only 3 wins away, and hopefully I'm able to get Coach Hancock on as soon as he reaches that milestone, like I was able to do for Coach Sparks last year. He has one returning starter, and that is Lionel Hodges, who averaged 9.3 points per game and 5.4 rebounds per game while shooting almost 50% from the field. Kobe Wilmoth, Jamal Chalmers, Dallas Harding Fair, and Anthony Stanford are all returning as well. Chalmers and Wilmont were huge for the Blue Devils off the bench. Harding Fair averaged 2.7 points per game, and Anthony Stanford shot 73.5% from the free throw line when he was in, averaged 2.5 rebounds per game with only averaging 3 points. The Blue Devils were busy in the transfer portal as well, with Markel Newsom coming out of North Iowa Community College. He averaged 9 points per game with averaging 2.7 rebounds and 3 assists per game. Also, Jakir Granger from Shorter U and Clemmy Chandler from Trinity Valley. That was a huge one for Coach Hancock to get. Trinity Valley is always at Hutch, so being able to implement what he was able to do at Trinity Valley and to Coach Hancock to make these players hungry to head to Hutch is always good. Even though he only played in 13 games last year and averaged 1.8 points, he kind of got that big experience with Trinity Valley. Coach Hancock also has a couple big players leaving him. Isaiah Tolbert, he averaged 11.2 points per game. Kamari Slaughter, of course, he was huge for him throughout the year. And Will Vassar, your leading scorer, leaves, and your leading rebounders. You also have Caleb Jenkins, one of your top players. So you're losing a lot, but you're also gaining. Again, like Coach Smith-Peters, you have a lot of returners coming back, 5 returners, and you get some good transfers like Newsom and Granger and Chandler. Those 3, I think, are going to mesh well with what Coach Hancock wants to do. And Kaskaskia is always one of those physical teams, and that's how Coach Hancock likes it. It is going to be very interesting to see what he was able to do in the Midwest Jamboree at Vincennes. Again, it was a mixed bag for most of these teams, especially when you're adding new blood into it. You have top freshmen coming in, and you're losing a lot of your offense. And I think Coach Hancock was able to handle that really well, especially in that first game. It was interesting to see them run up and down the floor really well and being able to score pretty much how he likes his offense to run. So look out for Kaskaskia this year. I think that they can be top 5 in the league. Yeah, I know with only a 9-team league that doesn't sound like a lot, but we're talking, within 3 games of being in first place here. Kaskaskia has always been one of those teams that are right up next to the upper echelon, and it's always going to be tough to face them in Centralia, and then you got to face them again at your own place. It's always easier to win on your home floor in this league, but I always say that you can never take a team for granted, and I think Kaskaskia has that really bad taste in their mouth, especially Lionel Hodges, because they did take advantage. They thought it was going to be an easy win with Lincoln Trail last year, and Lincoln Trail came out, won their only district game in a playoff situation, and was able to advance to INA. It is one of those things where I think Coach Hancock harped on it all year, not that he needed to, because Lionel Hodges and Kobe Wilmoth probably did it themselves, and it's going to be very fun to see this team, how they bounce back from that. They can either crumble, or they can bounce back and be within 3 games of the lead. So, again, Coach Hancock, I'm hoping to have you on when you hit 300 this year. It's going to be very interesting to see what this team is able to do, and I'm looking forward to it. You know, I said Kaskaskia is one of those teams that you always had to look out for in regards to being in the top 5 of the region. The Lakeland Lakers were that this past season. They finished 19-12, 8-8 in the district, finished top 4 teams in that 3-way tie. And Coach Larry, I was able to meet down at Vincennes. Hope to have him on shortly. Again, great coaches all around, and I'm really excited for Lakeland. They have one of the better gyms, I think, in that kind of Mackey Arena-esque gymnasium. It is so cool. One of the better gyms to go to. Not including your home gym, of course. They bring back 2 key components, and Sean Dekonovich, who averaged 14.7 points per game and had shot almost 48% from the floor, was on fire from behind the arc at 38% and grabbed 4.3 rebounds. You also had his best battery mate in Bryson Bond and Samuel Hinkapai. Bond averaged 8.5 points per game, and Hinkapai averaged 8 points per game. And you have Johnny Jones, who was huge off the bench as well, averaging 7.7 points per game, but really dished the ball out very well. And finally, Denham Leslie, who I look to have a bigger breakout season this year. You also get a you get a D2 transfer from the NJCAA in Danville Community College, and Peyton Wemmer, 6'7", averaged 9.3 points per game. And then you have a transfer from IU East who averaged 8.3 points per game, and Devin Woods. And I look for Dekonovich and Bond and Hinkapai to bring those 2 in as sophomores and lead the Lakers to a better record than they had last year. I think they're going to win 20 games this year, and again, be one of those top 5 teams in the district that are always dangerous. The big thing is that they lost Tyler Chapman last year. He was the big one that they lost, and Dayari Duncan. Chapman averaged 13 points per game and led the team in assists and rebounds, while Duncan was one of the leaders in rebounds, while Dayari Duncan led the team in rebounds with 6.3 rebounds per game, 7.6 points per game. So you're giving up a little bit of size, but you're keeping your core intact. And again, when you're dealing with junior college, having a lot of returners is a better thing than a worse thing. You're able to kind of install what you want, and I saw that a little bit more here in the Jamboree. They looked clean. Now, obviously, they played rough, but again, what Coach Davis said to me afterwards, and what I'm pretty sure all these coaches are saying to their teams, you don't hang banners in October. You don't hang banners on November 1st. You have to get to March. But I look for the Lakers to do that. So they're going to be a difficult out in Ina, and I look for them to win 20 games. It's going to be one of those things where can Coach Larry keep this going? You know, he's on the right track, and he's getting the team better every single year that he's been there. He's at about a 500 record in his 5th year. So I look for that to be improving every single year as well. He's a good dude. I'm looking forward to sitting down with him. And again, his team played okay at Vincennes. Really, all these teams looked okay. The only team that looked really good was Logan that I mentioned at the top of the show. But the Lakers, once again, they're always tough to play. They're always going to get in your face. And it's going to be like that again this year with Coach Larry's team. With Dekonovich and Bond specifically. We just talked about Kaskaskia. Let's talk about Lincoln Trail. A down year for the Statesmen. Like I said last year, they're always about 500 in the league play. 0-16 this past season in regular season play. Again, they were able to take on Kaskaskia and beat them in the play-in game and then go to Ina to lose to Vincennes. An 8-23 year for the Statesmen. Down year, obviously, and for Caton Huntenlocker, Devin Bell, Shea Alouye, and Ollie Alford. Those are your key players that you're losing for the Statesmen. You're getting a key transfer in Ty Williams, who for Hartford last season averaged 16 points per game. And that's Hartford Community College, Ronnie Ellis from Northeast Mississippi, another team that you always see in the beginning of the season with Vincennes. They always try to get a Mississippi team in for the Kiwanis Classic. And Northeast Mississippi last year, I remember seeing him against Logan or against Shawnee and against Vincennes. He averaged 7 points per game last year, averaged 2.4 rebounds. They're looking to get more physical, and I think they did that. Down there in the South, you have to play physical ball with EMCC and Colin and all those teams. And Jones, those three, top of the mind, are always physical and have some history of winning behind them. So for Ronnie Ellis to move from Northeast Mississippi to Lincoln Trail to help your returning starters in Gabe Amorgi and Marlon Bennett. Gabe was a 10.2 points per game last season with 6.5 rebounds. Marlon Bennett had 7.4 points per game and 3.7 rebounds per game. Gabe shot 62.2% from the field and 38.6% from Marlon Bennett. This team is going to be a whole lot better. They looked good at Vincennes. I was able to watch them play in Belis. They were communicating, they were sliding, they were doing everything that Coach Cotton wanted them to do. The first game was a little rough for them, but I think that was a lot of teams. Seeing live action for the first time against another opponent, it's one of these teams that has to get used to playing with each other. You don't have a lot of returning starters to be able to get things the way that Coach wants it to be on the floor. I think Gabe and Marlon both are going to be able to do that, especially after last year. They can kind of teach these new guys and the incoming freshmen what this league is all about, like Caden did last year for this team. Again, this is just, they had a bad year last year. All teams go through it. And I see Lincoln Trail being one of those teams that bounce back and are good and going to be a tough out in Ina. I don't see them playing in the play-in game again this year. I see them finishing around 6 or 7, maybe sneak into the top 5 and be right around 500. That's what they were last year or 2 years ago. And it's one of those things where if you can be in 500 and be safely in Ina, you have a shot to win this thing. And do I think Lincoln Trail can? Yes. Is it going to be difficult? Again, yes, because you have Logan and you have Vincennes and you have Olney in your district that have ran roughshod over the years. But you're also able to play spoiler when you get a couple good transfers coming in here. It's going to be really good to see them toughen their backcourt on both sides of the ball. And being athletic and a good rebounder that plays hard in this league, like Johnson is for them, is going to be huge in this district. So I'm looking forward to seeing Lincoln Trail this year. I think they're going to be really good, and it's just going to be a good bounce-back story for this team. And we just talked about a team that took a step back this year, and this team I see possibly taking a step back this year, and that's going to be the Olney Central Blue Knights. The Blue Knights last year finished off a spectacular 23-7 regular season, 13-3 in the district, good for second place, and they were ranked a number of times this year. Coach Glass has this team ready to go, but it's not without some caveats. And that caveat this year is you're losing your entire offense, unfortunately. You're losing Demarion Walkup, who averaged almost 19 points per game for you. Jacoby Thompson, who averaged 16 points per game for you. Darian Lewis averaged 11.5 points per game. JT Thomas averaged 14 points per game. And Delshawn Sims averaged 10 points per game. All of those guys were key contributors, obviously, to a historic year for Olney. They all graduated. You have one returning starter, and that is Javon Jones. And he was a part-time starter from last year's team. He averages 5.5 points per game and 5 rebounds per game. He does shoot the ball extremely well. 51.7% from the floor last year, and it's going to be one of these things where he is going to have to take up a bigger part, going from a part-time starter to a team leader is going to be pivotal for this team, especially since they put together a great non-conference schedule that starts at the VU Jamboree, where they got to take on Columbia State and EMCC. They do get a good transfer coming in, who averaged 13.3% or points per game in Bossier Parish, and that's Jaleel Bethea. So Javon Jones and Jaleel Bethea are your returning players that were in JUCO last year. Javon Jones, the only returning player for Olney Central this year. So Coach Glash and Coach Levina are going to get all these freshmen ready to go. It's going to be a definite challenge, and it looked like they were starting to get that into their system at VU on the 13th. But they looked like most teams do when you have to reload an entire roster, rough around the edges. There's no other way to say it. And it looked like that this team is going to have to scrap for wins. And again, in this league, that's what you have to do sometimes. It's not going to be always pretty, and you're not always going to blow out teams, but you're going to scrap and you're going to grind for wins, especially once December and January hit, where you're always playing each other. So I'm looking forward to Coach Glash and Coach Levina coming on and talking about that as we get better on. Coach Glass is entering his 4th year, or in 4 years, is 65-25. He was Olney's coach from 1996 to 2005, where he put up a 160 and 120 record. So, again, an accomplished coach coming back for your 5th year. The Blue Knights, again, finishing 2nd last year. I said that I was looking for Lincoln Trail to take a step forward this year. I wouldn't be surprised if Olney takes a step back. And for a step back for them is finishing 5th in the league. 5th or 6th in the league. I can see that. Unless they come out and are absolute gangbusters when they play at Vincennes here on November 1st and 2nd. If that happens, I'll eat my words. But it's going to be rough, again, with only one starter coming in and coming off of a very successful season that saw you a couple plays away from playing in Hutch. How do you do that while reloading your entire offense is going to be the question that they're going to have to ask themselves. I think they can do it. Don't get me wrong. Playing in the dungeon this year, again, is going to be one of those things where no one looks forward to it. They did it when I was there, and they're not looking forward to it again this year. It's just going to be one of those things where who steps up for this team? Is it going to be a freshman that nobody knows about yet? Or is it going to be Javon Jones, who, in his time that he started, was successful? I see it being a little bit of both. I see Javon stepping up and being that Jacoby Thompson type player for him, or JT Thomas type player, and a freshman coming in and picking up the slack that Demarion did as well. But it's all going to take time for the Blue Knights. This next team I didn't get to see down in Vincennes, unfortunately, and I only have what Dave Hunter has to say notes-wise for them. I do know that they are returning a lot of players, and that is going to be the Shawnee Saints, led by Coach John Sparks, who picked up his 300th win last year. And let me say again, Coach Sparks, such an honor to have you on right around the time that you got your 300th win. I know you were doing a lot of press around that time, and to take time to sit down with me, even if it's just over a phone call, again, one of my most favorite memories from last season. Again, they are returning a lot of good players. You're looking at Ladricus Pittman, who's averaging 13.4% or points per game, shooting 38% from the floor, 2.8 rebounds, and 3.6 assist point per game. Johnny Anderson was your leading scorer. You get him back at 14.2 points per game and almost 8 rebounds a game. You also get key players like Keshawn Washington, who averaged 7.5 points per game with dishing out 4 assists. Xavier Bell and Israel Welton were key players. Again, didn't get a lot of time because you had players like Osiris Marr and Trayvon Thomas and Miles Lemon. But now you get to see these guys a lot more, and I think they're going to be very dangerous. Again, I see them cracking the top 3 in this league. Plus, you get a good team, or you get a good transfer in Tyree Jackson from Dodge City. He averaged 4 points per game. Again, you're losing Osiris Marr, who averaged 8.6 points per game. Trayvon Thomas was 8.1 points per game. And Miles Lemon was 6.7 points per game. Coach Sparks says Tyrese will be given additional depth and experience at the guard wing position. He will add more shooting as he has potential to be an elite perimeter defender. This team likes to shoot the 3 ball. They live and die by it. And most of the time, they can win games like that. It's going to be really fun to see this team again. They're very optimistic about this season with that core coming back. And you have, according to Coach Sparks, one of the 2 better freshmen, or Johnny Anderson and Ladricus Pittman returning, 2 of the better freshmen from last season coming back. So, again, it's one of those things where, without being able to see them live, it's going to be one of those things where I got to take a pause and see if they really are for real. I don't doubt Coach Sparks, though. His team likes to play on the perimeter. They also know how to defend the perimeter, and they were one of the better perimeter defending teams in the league. They'll get after you. They'll be scrappy like they always are. Ulen is no place to lose or to play. It's always hard to play there, and so it's going to be very, very fun to see this team. Again, they put up a show, so their home games are streamed live. I suggest you take the time to watch them because they can play, and they are fun to watch. Keshawn last year was one of the more fun players to watch when he was on the floor. Great perimeter defender. Ladricus and Johnny Anderson averaging double digits this year. It's going to be one of those seasons where the Saints are going to be very scary. Now we get into the real fun part because we're going to be talking about back-to-back Hall of Fame coaches here in the next 2 segments. Starting with the Southwestern Illinois Blue Storm, or the SWIC Blue Storm. Last year they finished 500 at 16-16, 6-10 in the district. Hall of Fame coach Jay Harrington is entering his 47 years, has 891 wins and 549 defeats. Overall, coaching-wise, 990 and 665. I hope to get him on once he hits win number 1,000. So I'll be reaching out to that coaching staff about that. Of course, he's going to be doing a lot of press this year when that happens. So, Coach Harrington, again, hope to have you on. This year, again, SWIC is always one of those teams where they get into your face. They slow the game down. They are a grinded-out type team. They're going to be that this year, again, especially after you're losing players like Saxon Hopker, Nazir Leonard, Dallas Rufus, Jacoby Huddleston. All those players were key players for him last year. Saxon Hopker averaged 13.5% points per game and 10.2 rebounds per game. Nazir Leonard averaged 12.6 points per game and 3 rebounds. Dallas Rufus, just 11-4. Jacoby Huddleston, 8-7. So, again, it's going to be one of those times where you lose your offense and you're going to have to rely on a single guy. Now, they didn't get any top transfers, which is rare for them. And Bennett Briles is the only returning player for Coach Harrington. He averaged 7.7 points per game. Again, shot the ball really, really well at 47.9%. 3-pointers he's going to have to work on. He averaged 27% from there and averaged 3 rebounds per game. So, it's going to be one of those things where Coach Harrington says they got a lot of young faces with only one returner. They're a hard-working and determined group that has a chance to achieve great things. A deep group will get after you. And I see that again. They're always going to be one of those teams that get after you and are in your face from opening tip to final horn. And again, Coach Harrington, Hall of Fame coach, when you lose your offense, it's always going to be difficult. So I see SWIC, again, probably being right where they were last year. 500 overall, 6-10 in the district, but those 6-10, that 6-10 is a misleading 6-10. So I look for them to be better than what their record dictates. Like I said, we have back-to-back Hall of Fame coaches. This one is Coach Todd Franklin, 389 and 82 overall in his 15 years at Vincennes, 719 and 179 overall in 27 years. Vincennes is coming off a 30-4 record, 14-2 in the district, where both those losses were by a single point, and one of them was actually in overtime. They are losing everybody. Essentially everybody. They're only returning LeBron Thomas, who, again, great. He averaged 17.9 points per game, 44.3% shooting, averaged 4.4 rebounds, and 4.4 assists per game. He's going to be your general on the floor. And that's what Coach Franklin really runs his offense through, is that point guard. You're losing everybody else. You're losing Michael Sebonsu, the King twins, Ryan Oliver, Victor Lato, Demarion Yates, and Kyrie Dixon. Michael Sebonsu was your big rebounder, 9.7 rebounds per game, averaged 12.3 points per game. The King twins, Chris averaging 11.3 points per game, and Kent 8.5 points per game. Kent had 4.2 rebounds per game, and Chris averaged about 4 assists per game. Ryan Oliver, 9 points per game and almost 5 rebounds. Kyrie Dixon, 8.5 points per game, and Demarion Yates, 6.8 points per game. It's going to be hard for them. They looked good in their first game in the Jamboree. They looked off kilter in the other 2 games. And again, can't determine what they're going to be like on November 1st off of seeing them. But, I mean, just going off of the eye test, they looked like they had a lot of work to do. I did ask Coach Davis how they looked at the Midwest Jamboree. They looked a lot better, so whatever Coach Franklin said in between the 2 Jamborees was huge for them. Now, they are getting some good transfers in Hisuian El Malarney from Bismarck State, who averaged 11.8 points per game and 7.7 rebounds per game. Look for that to be your Michael Sebonsu replacement. Byron Ananmu off of McCook, who averaged 11.5 points per game. Michael Cooper, from North Platte, again, 11.5 points per game. And Ali Sacco from Gillette Community College. So, you're getting a lot of good transfers coming in. LeBron knows what needs to be done. He was an All-American last year. Vincennes, they always seem to find a way to win games. And it's going to be one of those seasons where I'm just going to have to wait and see. I think they could either be top in the district or, like they were 2 years ago, finish towards the bottom of the district. It's either way. Again, it's nothing against what they can do, because if they're on, they're difficult and they are going to be a tough team. But they have to get right, and that is something that Coach Franklin always harps on, I know. And again, I am so thankful for him and Coach Davis last year sitting down with me and talking with me. It was an honor to have Coach Franklin for those 40 minutes during the holiday break. Always great to have him on. Again, you can always learn so much from a Hall of Fame coach. Again, their first 2 games this week are going to be the barometer test for me. It's going to be really fun to see what they are able to do, though. And we're wrapping up with the newest coach in the league in Terrence McGee in the Wabash Valley Warriors. Coach McGee is coming in off of a second year and a district runner-up to the Trailblazers. His team finished 17-11 last year, 8-8 in the district. They are losing a lot of firepower in Kaleem Taylor, Brandon Razor Moore, Androne Sprinkles, and Lucas Henderson, and don't forget Julian McGowan. All those guys gone from last year. They do return 2 key players, though, and that is Daniel Robinson and Muja Burton. Robinson averaged 10.5 points per game, 43.8% shooting from the field, and almost 39% from three-point land, averaging 5 rebounds a game. Muja, 7.7 points per game, off of a 42.9% shooting from the field and over 30% from behind the arc, and an excellent free throw shooter. Those 2 are going to be your returners for Coach McGee. Again, they looked really, really good in that first game in Vincennes. They looked a little shaky in the other 2, but again, one of those things that you're going to get used to, especially when you have a ton of transfers. And boy, did this team have a ton of transfers. You have Davian Turner from Highland, Kansas College, who averaged 10.7 points last season for them. Jaron Traps from Western Texas Community College, 9.5% point per game. Jameel Barber from SWIC, so you have an inter-district transfer there. That's interesting. You don't see that a lot. So let's see if Jameel is able to, when they face SWIC, able to get a little bit of revenge. He averaged almost 7 points per game last year and almost 5 rebounds. Sherrod Dent averaged 2.8 points per game. Clay Butler from Lincoln University only played 8 games, so he transfers in, looking to be a bigger part of this team for Coach McGee. Kevin Anthony from the Oklahoma Panhandle only played in 17 games. The big one that I see here is from NCAA Division III, Franklin College, and that's Kamia Chandler. So that's going to be big. He targeted him well. Kamia only comes in at 5'10". He has another one from that as well, coming in from Fishers. So again, when you lose players like BRM, Brandon Razor Moore, and Kaleem Taylor, you're always going to take a step back. I think his expectations are going to be higher now because he did finish second in the league. If you lower those, I think you're going to be huge. I see them finishing top 5 in the league. I know I say that to most of these teams, but again, when we're talking in October or early November, all these teams are going to be good. It's really hard to determine. Ask me again in December when we see these teams and we have good litmus test on them where I think they're going to be going into district play. But again, Coach McGee gives a great statement here. He's saying, I'm excited about this new season and the team that they're building. Our young men are going to work hard and push each other to what they do. You have, again, key returners in Daniel Robinson and Muja Burton. And again, the portal was kind to them. So again, I see this team probably being top 5. Their ceiling probably number 3 again. But it's going to be one of those things where who steps up besides Daniel and Muja? They're going to need a third. Is it going to be Jamil because he knows how this league's played? Wait and see. So, again, Coach McGee, always great to have you. We had a great conversation down in Vincennes, and always supportive of what I'm doing here. And again, always appreciated for the time that you give me and the feedback that you give me as well. Let's go ahead and jump into this week's slate of games, starting with John A. Logan. They're taking on Mineral Area on November 1st. I was able to catch bits and pieces of Mineral Area as I was walking through the Jamboree on the 13th. And Logan always takes on these tough opponents for their non-conference schedule in the thinking of iron sharpens iron, and they're going to be ready for the district when that happens. It proved right the first 2 years, and starting off with such a heavy hitter in Mineral Area, always tough. And then you turn around and face the host of this classic, the Three River Raiders, on their home floor. Gonna be tough, but I think that's what Tyler Smith-Peters likes with the first 2 games of the season. You're not gonna be better by facing JV teams and prep schools. And he knows that because, again, he's 2 years removed from winning a national title. So, again, kudos to Coach Smith-Peters for scheduling this classic. And these 2 teams, always going to be interesting to see how he does, like he did last year, with these 2 games. And I'm looking forward to it. The next game is going to be the Lakeland Lakers versus the Lincolnland Loggers in Mattoon on November 2nd. And again, getting a quality opponent to start off your season that Lakeland was able to do is a huge kudos to Coach Larry and them. Lincolnland's always going to come ready to play, and it's going to be able to be a good preseason test for your guys. Only playing 1 game this week on November 2nd, so you get to see how you go against live competition, but you're also able to rest your guys, getting your guys ready to go for the long haul in November into December. Always a great thing. Again, Lakeland going up against Lincolnland on November 2nd in Mattoon. Going to be a very interesting contest. I see this being a close game in the first half, and then Lakeland being able to pull away in the second. Up next is going to be Lincoln Trail versus Harry S. Truman on November 2nd. And this is going to be a big key battle for Marlon Bennett and Gable Morgie as they look to defend their home floor. Again, only winning 9 games last year. I look for them to put on a good showing, probably leading this one from opening tip to final horn. But again, big time thing for these 2 players who saw quality minutes last season to be the leaders now. They're the guys, and this is their opening day for sophomore season. And in Robinson, it's going to be a good thing for them, and I see them both to have huge games. Up next is the Olney Central Blue Knights, where they're taking on Columbia State on November 1st. and East Mississippi on November 2nd, part of that Kiwanis Classic that Vincennes is holding. Again, quality opponents that Vincennes brings in for this Classic. Olney jumping in this year. It was Shawnee last year, so competition is going to be tough for both these teams. Columbia State was at the Jamboree, and they were doing some scouting on both Vincennes and Olney. They looked good last year. They're going to be good this year. They're always a contender for Hutch. EMCC, they play in that region with Northeast Mississippi and Jones. Again, I mentioned Jones because they came off of a national title in 2013, 2014, 2012, 2013 maybe. But that region is always tough down there in the South. They're historically good in football. They're okay in basketball. I'm looking for East Mississippi to give Olney a battle on the second. Columbia State, again, a team that you see almost yearly at Hutch. Great opening test for the Blue Knights. Vincennes always hosts a great Kiwanis Classic, and it's going to be very interesting to see how Coach Glash is able to guide his team against quality opponents to open up this. Sticking with the Kiwanis Classic, let's go ahead and talk about Vincennes' slate of games, starting with EMCC on November 1st, and then the Columbia State Chargers on November 2nd. And really, it's that second game that I'm really looking forward to. Columbia State and Vincennes historically are always at Hutch. So to have Columbia State come up to Vincennes and play them again is always entertaining for an early season barometer test. This is it. And you have EMCC again coming up from Mississippi to play in Indiana. So a lot of good games going on in Vincennes on November 1st and 2nd. A lot of early season tests here already that I can see. Vincennes is coming in as the only ranked team in the district at number 18 in both the NJCAA polling and the JUCO Advocate polling. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they come out with that. So let's go ahead and jump into our next slate of games. Up next is the Shawnee Saints, where they head to Moberly area to play in that Classic, where they take on Link Year Prep on November 1st in Coffeyville on November 2nd. And Coffeyville is the game that I want to see for the Saints. That's their barometer test early in the season, because Coffeyville is another team that historically goes to Hutch. And to be played on a neutral floor is huge for the Saints. Again, they are returning one of the more players, and it's going to be interesting to see how they mesh going up against Coffeyville. Again, a team that goes to Hutch almost every single year. So for Coach Sparks, again, to get a quality Classic in here. He was at Vincennes last year and now at Moberly this year. Great opening season test for the Saints, and I'm looking forward to that game, especially on the 2nd. And the final two games that I'm going to be covering for this week is Wabash Valley's slate. They open up their season on November 2nd against Moran Valley, and then they take on Community Christian on November 3rd. Both these teams are coming down from Michigan to Mount Carmel to take on the Warriors on their home floor. And again, Moran Valley, one of those teams that you kind of see every now and then go to Danville. So again, Coach McGee picking up quality opponents to open up their season. Playing Saturday, Sunday instead of Friday, Saturday is a little bit different. Not bad different, just different when you see these early season games. But it's going to be very interesting to see how they groove together with Muja Burton and them leading the way. I see both these games being blowouts. I think Moran Valley will keep it close in the first 15 minutes or so before Wabash Valley wakes up and takes over. But it's going to be very interesting to see what Coach McGee and them are going to be able to do. There are two district teams that don't play this week. and that is Kaskaskia and SWIC. Kaskaskia doesn't play until November 5th, and SWIC doesn't play until November 8th. SWIC will open up their season against Moberly area, and Kaskaskia will take on Missouri Baptist, and I will get into those games next week when I do my sit-down interviews, or my sit-down breakdown of this week's slate of games, and go over the next week's. But that's going to do it for this episode. Again, I'm excited to have to sit down and do these again, and to actually have a name for this season. So hope you join me on this ride of the NJCAA Central District Hoops Report. I will see you next week.